I was SA'd by a friend of a friend, then made to walk down the aisle with her. I've shared this story before, but never with this level of detail and never with the recognition of what really happened. Lately, I've been going through a lot and trying to take a more honest look at my past, and this particular experience keeps coming back to me. It feels important to finally name it for what it is and admit that I was raped. This happened many years ago, shortly after I had escaped from a very toxic relationship. My best friend reached out to me and suggested I come to a party at his place to cheer me up. He lived quite far away at the time, but I thought, why not make a trip out of it? So I decided to go. I arrived and we had lunch together. He kept joking about setting me up with someone, but I wasn't really interested. We then went back to his house where his girlfriend was there, along with one of her friends. He introduced me to this friend, and immediately, I could tell where this was headed. I went through the pleasantries, said hello, and made small talk. Then he pulled me aside and asked what I thought of her, encouraging me to go for it. I told him I wasn't interested, that I just wanted to enjoy the party, but he insisted that I should blow off some steam. As the party got underway, it became clear that she had probably received the same pep talk because she started following me around. I tried to be polite, but didn't outright say, I'm not interested. I moved between different groups, tried to engage in other conversations, but she kept following me. Eventually, she disappeared into the house and I thought I was in the clear. I drank heavily and eventually blacked out. When I woke up the next morning, I found myself in my friend's bedroom, naked, with her lying beside me. I couldn't remember anything about how I got there. She was still asleep. There were used condoms on the floor, and the door to the room was wide open. The window overlooked the backyard where the party had been. I got up and went to the bathroom to shower, and as I was in the shower, she walked in, casually got in with me, and pressed herself up against me. She started touching me, and though I wasn't in the mood, I didn't know how to react. I froze. I didn't know what to do, but I didn't stop her. She kissed me, bent down in front of me, and asked me to fuck her. I did. I don't even know why. I just wanted it to end. I couldn't finish. It felt like it took forever, and after it was over, she talked about how great the night was. I rushed through the shower, got dressed, and quickly left. When I went into the living room, my friend and a few others were there, looking at me with smirks. They congratulated me, made comments about putting on a show, and I felt disgusted. I was angry. She came out of the room, and everyone started talking about going for lunch. I said I had a long drive ahead and needed to leave. She looked upset, but I practically ran out, grabbing my things and leaving without looking back. Years later, my friend was getting married to the same girlfriend. I was invited to be a groomsman. I didn't ask if she was going to be a bridesmaid, but when I showed up to the rehearsal, there she was. We were paired to walk down the aisle together. I don't remember if we spoke, but we probably did. I didn't bring it up. It had been so long, what was the point? I kept my distance from her outside of the ceremony and rehearsal. On the day of the wedding, my friend pointed out, "Isn't it funny that you two are walking down the aisle together?" That comment struck me like a dagger. I felt this overwhelming sense of hurt and anger, but I got through the wedding, and after that, I pretty much stopped talking to him altogether. For years, I struggled with this. I thought that because we had sex later, when I was sober, maybe that invalidated what had happened the night before. But now I see that even that wasn't consensual. My blackout didn't make it okay. I wasn't in control of myself, and neither was she. I'm not sure what I hope to achieve by writing this. Maybe just putting it into words is a step forward. I'm tired, I'm hurting, but I'm trying to heal. I don't talk to this friend anymore for several reasons. I recently started therapy for a lot of reasons too. I haven't brought this up in therapy yet, but I know I need to. I'm not doing great, but I'm working on it. Thank you to everyone who has shown concern. Some people are suggesting that she may not have been in a clear state of mind, that she could have been pressured or didn't have bad intentions. I get that, but using the word rape may vilify her in a way that isn't fair, and that's part of what I've been struggling with. The truth is, I don't know what happened that night. The last thing I remember was sitting on the ground asking someone for water. What I've come to accept is that this was a traumatic experience that affected my future relationships. I see the friends who didn't look out for me as the ones who failed me, but I still stand by calling it rape. because there's no version of what happened where my friends weren't complicit in that night, even after I had clearly shown I wasn't interested. Update 1. After the wedding, my life was never the same. I thought I could move past what had happened, but the truth is, I couldn't. Every time I look back, I feel anger, pain, and even shame, especially when I think about my friends, the ones I trusted, the ones I shared so many joys and sorrows with in the past, the ones who completely abandoned me at the most crucial moment of my life. After the wedding, I lost contact with all of them. I refused to attend any gatherings and stopped responding to their messages. But one day, after I had started therapy, I received a call from an old friend, someone I had once trusted deeply. He said he wanted to meet and apologize. He told me that he hadn't realized how much he had hurt me, that he was truly sorry for what had happened, and that he wanted me to forgive him. But I couldn't forgive him so easily. In my mind, the images of that girl, of that wedding, and of the nights I couldn't remember still haunt me. The feeling of being betrayed, abandoned, and disrespected made it impossible for me to forgive him. When I met him, I could feel the anxiety in his voice. He looked at me with eyes full of regret, but I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. What he had done couldn't just be a mistake. What he had allowed to happen couldn't be erased just by an apology. You can't just say sorry and think everything will be okay, I said, trying to stay calm. You and your friends put me in a situation I couldn't control. You could have protected me, but you didn't. You left me alone. He lowered his head, as if my words had shaken him, but I didn't care about his regret anymore. What mattered to me was that I couldn't live with this feeling forever. It was time for me to face what had happened, to accept the truth, and not let the past control my life. You need to understand that I don't forgive you just because you're sorry, I continued. You betrayed me, and things can't go back to how they were. He stayed silent, not knowing what else to say. I stood up, looked at him one last time, and said, "Live with your truth, and never forget what you've done. All you can do now is make sure others don't have to go through what I did." I walked out of the room, never looking back. Though I didn't know where I would go next, I felt that a part of me had been set free. Things could never go back to the way they were, but at least I had started facing myself, facing the pain and the price of silence and fear. In the weeks that followed, I continued therapy, began sharing what had happened, and took it one step at a time to heal. And one day, I realized that forgiveness wasn't something I needed from the people who had hurt me. True forgiveness comes from within, when I can face the past, accept the truth, and finally not let it define me. Update 2. As time passed, I gradually regained my composure in life. But then, one evening, an unexpected situation changed everything completely. I was sitting in my usual coffee shop, a place where I often go to think about things, when I received a message from an unknown number. I opened my phone and suddenly felt like an electric shock ran through me. "Do you remember me? Don't think I've forgotten you." It was a message from the girl, the one I had spent one night with, the one I had avoided all these years. My heart was filled with chaos. I didn't want to face her again, but at the same time, a part of me felt the need to have answers for what had happened. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I tried to calm myself, took a sip of coffee, and thought about the situation. But then came the second message. "He told me everything. He's not your friend anymore. But I want you to understand, I'm not a bad person." That message threw me into confusion. Why was she reaching out to me now? Why now, when I was trying to move forward? All the pain, the buried memories, flared up again. I couldn't sit still anymore. I stood up, walked out of the coffee shop, and got into my car. It felt like I was being pulled into a vortex I couldn't escape from. For the first time in many years, I decided to seek answers. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I had to face what had happened. Her address popped into my mind, and without thinking much, I just knew I had to drive in that direction. When I arrived, the light outside her apartment window was still on. My heart was pounding, and it felt like I was doing something wrong, but I couldn't stop. I knocked on the door. Each knock felt like a hammer on my chest, but I stood there, determined. The door opened. She was there with a slightly surprised but not scared look. Her long hair still tangled, like it had been years ago. The feeling I had when I looked at her was a mix of hatred and an indescribable sadness. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice calm, without a hint of worry. "I need to know. I need to know what really happened. Why me?" I could no longer control my emotions. My voice was almost a shout, but I couldn't stop. She invited me in, and I sat on the couch. Everything in that room was so familiar, but also so foreign. The old paintings on the walls, the couch where we had once sat, the memories buried over time. She sighed and began to tell me things I had never heard, things I never knew. "He made me do everything. He said if I didn't, you would leave and never come back. He told me I had to help you relax. You don't remember anything, do you?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with deep sadness. I sat there silent, but inside I felt like a heavy rock was pressing down on me. All I knew was that I couldn't go back. The truth is not always easy to accept. Not everyone has good intentions. "So, we were just pawns in a game he created?" I blurted out, tears filling my eyes, feeling like everything was crumbling. She nodded, her gaze full of regret. "I can't change what happened, but I can apologize, if that helps you." I stood up without saying anything. What she said made me feel like I was standing on the edge, but I couldn't stay there any longer. Yes, I needed an apology, but not from her. I needed to end this so I could move on with my life. "I don't need your apology," I said firmly. "Thank you, but I've suffered enough." I walked out the door without looking back. Things couldn't be healed right away, but at least I had the answers I needed. It felt like I had just walked through a dark door in the past and stepped into the light, even if just a little. In this way, I knew that life could still go on. Even though I didn't know what would happen in the future, at least I didn't let it define me anymore. Update 3. Sometime after that meeting, I felt like I had crossed a major turning point in my life. I couldn't change the past, but at least I could decide not to let it continue affecting my future. After that meeting, I stopped talking to her, and I didn't go back to the people who had caused me pain. In reality, I had learned how to let go. Each day that passed, I could feel the change in myself. I no longer woke up to nightmares from the past, no longer allowed myself to get caught up in dark thoughts. I began to rediscover small joys in life. Short trips, peaceful mornings, conversations with people who truly cared. Step by step, I learned how to love myself more, to forgive myself and those around me, even though it wasn't easy. One day, I sat alone in a familiar coffee shop, sipping a hot cup of coffee and looking out the window. I realized that the weight in my heart was gone. I didn't have to fight with the past anymore because I had learned to live with it. I no longer had to hide my memories, no longer had to endure emotions I once couldn't face. I had learned how to take control of my life, even if sometimes there were things I couldn't explain or change. Honestly, I couldn't start over, but I could keep moving forward, not to seek perfection, but to find peace within myself. Life continued with its ups and downs, but I understood that true strength doesn't come from avoiding difficulties, but from the ability to face and overcome them. And then, I began to realize that what mattered most was not what had happened to me, but how I responded to and learned from those experiences. I didn't need to be the person the past wanted me to become. I could be myself, stronger, more resilient, and most importantly, true to who I am. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready to keep moving forward because I know I've taken control of my path. So, in the end, I found my release.